was his daughter again. Thank you, Calvary. Phyllis Robinson.
This is Frank Calamari. With Calvary at Home, experience our unique Calvary care right in your own home. Call us today at 718-518-2465.
Geopolitical risk, changing regulation, economic uncertainty. EY can help you identify the risks that matter. When it comes to the complexities you're facing, it isn't just about the numbers. To keep ahead of changing business needs and evolving regulations, CFOs, boards, and audit committees need critical insights to make better decisions. For more insights that matter, visit ey.com/beyond the numbers.
When they're investigating, we can't stop watching. This month on BritBox. Sit back, relax, and enjoy watching the detectives. Discover Britain's most bingeable mysteries, including the brand new season of Grace, the hit series based on the books by best-selling author Peter James. Unwind with the detectives you could watch all night long. Stream them all now exclusively on BritBox. Endlessly intriguing. Start your free trial at BritBox.com.
This is Tom Keene. I'm Jonathan Farrow.
And I'm Lisa Abramowitz.
Join us Monday morning for Bloomberg Surveillance.
A bang-up jobs report, perhaps the calming bank crisis. Subrata Rajappa joins from SocGen.
And on the debt ceiling debate, former Treasury official Dalip Singh now of PTIM Fixed Income.
Bloomberg Surveillance Monday, starting at 7 a.m. on Bloomberg 1130, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app.
Or listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports show, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Scarlett Fu. Damian Sassar will be with us shortly. Michael Barr is off. Now, Tara Nortman is co-founder and managing partner of Monarch Collective. It's a $100 million fund that aims to elevate women in pro sports. Damien and I had the pleasure of talking with her about the fund, as well as her other work in sports, including with Angel City FC. Let's return to that conversation. Let's talk a little bit about Angel City FC. What is the backstory here? What was the first phone call that led to your being a key member in founding this club? Who brought it up first? How did it come about?
You know, it actually came up for me, kind of the first thing that happened was I went to the 2015 World Chess Games. And so it was kind of, 7 or 8 years in the making. I went to the game. I was completely activated. I felt like I was 12 again. I couldn't buy a jersey. I couldn't find content. And I started this journey of what was then sort of accidental market research and then turned into very intentional market research. And so the road for me went through, I truly was like, told that I was the only person who couldn't find, wanted to buy jerseys and watch content. But Instagram existed. And so there were a couple of things that kept happening. I ended up meeting a bunch of the players and helping, just as a friend with their business, the head of the U.S. national team, who pulled me into the pay equity fight and asked me to be an advisor, and I didn't even know what that meant. I was a capitalist being asked to help socialists. But I was that's what activated me. I wanted to get the women paid, and they were the best women in the world. And so I think that's a huge part of what led to Angel City and Monarch is sort of the full view of all stakeholders. And if you kind of bring everything together, and you think about how to lift up all stakeholders, and it's not perfect that you can build something. So anyway, that's the backstory. I basically ended up pulling Natalie Portman into the pay equity fight. We've met through some of our gender equity work and started throwing events together. And candidly, one day she said, "Why don't we start a team?" And I said, "Are you nuts? Like, I have a full-time job, 3 kids, And she said, "Well, don't you know how to do this?" I said, yeah. I mean, she's like, I can do this, but usually I don't need a stadium and an exclusive license to bring something to market. You can just start building a dating app, and maybe it turns into Tinder, maybe it doesn't, and that's okay. But honestly, I say now, the queen of Star Wars, the first female Thor, says, "Don't you know how to do this? Let's start a soccer team." And
that's a challenge you can't back down from.
Yeah, it's like, okay, growth mindset, let's go. Or as the women's national team would say, LFG. So that was really, we have a text exchange. It's actually on Twitter somewhere, and I think it is in our HBO documentary. You'll see it in the trailer for it. But I started doing research, and I realized it was feasible. I started talking to men's team, stadiums, different people in U.S. soccer, et cetera. And then I realized that we needed somebody to operate it day to day, and I started looking for a president, and I recruited in Julie Ehrman, who became our third co-founder, because football against each other in high school. So I've known her, for 25 years. She's much better than me, for the record, and I now only play against her because she's so competitive. I don't want to lose to her in a pickup game. But yeah, that's what started it. And then, like I say, we got 100 no's. We raised our first $1 million before COVID, and we're now doing many tens of millions of dollars in revenue, $1 million in contracted sponsorships, selling out stadiums. But most importantly, it's the first majority female, owned, female-backed professional sports team in the country. And we've done it where we make decisions based on mission and finances sometimes come second to mission, which I think will help us drive finances over many generations and not just over 2 or 3 years.
Kara, so much fun having you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thank you, guys. Such a pleasure to be here. I love your work. I appreciate it.
By the way, if you missed any of that conversation, listen to it now on the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. On demand now at Bloomberg.com/podcast, and of course, on your favorite podcast platform. This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports show. We're here each and every week at the same time, and of course, online, wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Scarlet Fu. Thank you so much for joining us. Again next week for the latest on the stories moving big money in sports. You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio. Stay with us. Today's top stories and global business headlines are coming up right now.
From the financial capital of the world, broadcasting across the globe, this is WBBR News, Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update.
It's a day of celebration in the streets of London as King Charles III has officially been crowned. A historic coronation ceremony took place at Westminster Abbey for Charles and Queen Camilla before a crowd of thousands of guests from across the world. Shouts of "God Save the King" rang out and trumpets sounded after the crown was placed on Charles's head. The coronation comes nearly 8 months after the death of Queen Elizabeth II back in September. Several protesters opposed to the monarchy were arrested ahead of the coronation this morning. CNN reports police arrested organizers of an anti-monarchy protest. They also seized hundreds of the group's placards carrying the slogan, "Not My King." The favorite for the 149th Kentucky Derby has been scratched. For the owner of Derby favorite Forte, history seems to be repeating itself.
Devastated about my friends and family back at the hotel. Do I need to tell that we have to scratch the Derby favorite? Almost deja vu all over again.
In 2011, owner Mike Rapoli had to withdraw Derby favorite Uncle Mo the day before the race due to what turned out to be a rare liver disease. The State Racing Commission vet reportedly scratched Forte this morning because of a bruise on the horse's foot. The field for this afternoon's race is down to 18. The Department of Justice is handing out the longest sentence for a convicted January 6th defendant. Brian Shook has more.
Peter Schwartz was sentenced to 14 years in prison on 4 counts of assaulting police. Prosecutors said Schwartz was the first person to throw a chair at officers, which led to an opening on the police line at the Capitol. He was already on probation at the time for at least one other case that involved assault and illegal firearms possession. I'm Brian Shook.
More than 13,000 people in the Canadian province of Alberta have been forced from their homes as wildfires burn out of control. At least 78 wildfires are burning across the province. I'm Brad C. Apple CEO Tim Cook says the tech powerhouse has no plans for big layoffs. Michael Kastner has more.
Cook's comment to CNBC on Thursday puts Apple in sharp contrast to other big tech players like Alphabet, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon, which have laid off thousands of employees this year. Cook didn't rule out the possibility of layoffs, but said Apple isn't planning any and that job cuts would only be a last resort. He pointed out that Apple is cutting costs and has slowed its rate of hiring. I'm Michael Kastner.
Millions of taxpayers will share in a $141 million TurboTax settlement. New York Attorney General Letitia James says the TurboTax owner Intuit charged people for services that should have been free. The settlement covers 4.4 million military members and low-income taxpayers. For the 2016 through 2018 tax years, they'll get an email from the settlement fund administrator, then receive a check automatically without having to file a claim. With motorist fatalities up 21% nationally, Virginia ranks in the top 10 of the deadliest states for distracted driving. Rebecca Hughes has more.
Data from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration shows distracted driving fatalities increased by 11% from 2020 to 2021, the highest they've been in 5 years. 8 News reports Virginia ranked 9th out of the top 10 deadliest states for distracted driving, with New Mexico taking the top spot. The Money Geek survey also shows higher insurance rates for those areas listed as the most dangerous as well. I'm Rebecca Hughes.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders proposing legislation to raise national minimum wage to $17 an hour. He told reporters this week the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, which he chairs, will mark up the bill June 14th. Sanders has long pushed for a higher federal minimum wage, which currently sits at $7.25 an hour. Sanders says millions of Americans are currently working on starvation wages. I'm Brad Stevens.
And I'm Scott Carr in the Bloomberg newsroom. Some of the stories we're watching: Berkshire Hathaway has bought back $4.4 billion worth of its stock, an increase from the same period last year, as Warren Buffett's sprawling conglomerate deals with turbulent markets that offered fewer of the blockbuster deals the investors renowned for. In a statement announcing first quarter earnings today, Berkshire Hathaway reported $8.07 billion of operating earnings held by its insurance unit. Buffett, of course, is in Omaha today for the annual gathering of shareholders. Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet has more.
The annual meeting is only the second one to be held in person since 2019. Last year's event came hot on the heels of Berkshire's deal for insurer Allegheny Corp and a buying spree that built out stakes in Occidental Petroleum and HP. Since then, Berkshire has been less active. Investors are contending with elevated market volatility, turmoil in the regional banking sector, and a hawkish Federal Reserve that has taken aggressive steps to contain inflation. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
New York City council members are considering now a suite of mental health legislation, days after a mentally disturbed man was killed on the subway. Councilman Kevin Riley's had a visceral reaction to the death of 30-year-old Jordan Neely, saying black men are being choked out instead of being given resources. Police say Neely was threatening passengers aboard an F train when a Marine put him in a chokehold to subdue him. Neely used to be a Michael Jackson impersonator, but had recently been experiencing mental health struggles. Council members are considering legislation that would create a mental health roadmap. It's been a wild week for banks as short sellers piled into regional bank shares. Some traders rushed toward gold, and oil and volatility spiked. Senior strategist at UBS Financial Services, Nadia Lovell, said there may be anxiety over efforts to calm down the turmoil, leaving middle market untouched.
Market internals, including the float data, all sending some bearish signal and suggest that some of the systematic buy that we have been seeing in this market in the short coverage report just isn't there anymore. You have valuations that are extended, earnings optimisms that are more than fully priced in with 18 times forward P. So we just think that this market remains fragile and vulnerable, and we're looking for another 5% or so pullback from here.
Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Scott Carr, and this is Bloomberg. Now let's check on Bloomberg Sports.
The Knicks and Heat play Game 3 in Miami with the series even at 1. In Los Angeles, the Lakers and Warriors meet in Game 3. They're also tied at 1. The Wall Street Journal reports NBA Hall of Famer Shaquille O'Neal is joining a group looking to buy BET Media. Bids are due later this month. The Yankees play the Rays in St. Pete. The Mets continue their weekend series with the Rockies at Citi Field. Today's the Kentucky Derby. Forte, the favorite, has been scratched after a Saturday morning workout. Post time 6:57. That's a Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Joel Sir.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence.
Spotify have always had fantastic user momentum.
Solar energy, the fastest growing corner of the energy market by far.
In-depth research and data on 2,000 companies and 130 industries.
The talent wars are right around Wall Street, but the buy side is sucking up the sell side.
Aldi was the fastest growing grocery chain in the United States last year.
Bloomberg Intelligence with Alex Steele and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Over the next hour, we're going to dig inside the big business stories impacting Wall Street and the global markets.
Each and every week, we provide in-depth research and data on some of the 2,000 companies, 130 industries our analysts cover worldwide.
Today, we're going to take a look at why Canadian wealth managers are buying their way into the U.S. market.
Plus, what challenges does Amazon face as it takes on rivals in the grocery business?
A lot. But first, Cleveland-Cliffs is the largest producer of automotive steel, and it's looking to shrink its operating performance gap. This comes as peers like Nucor and Steel Dynamics dynamics really forge ahead here. Bloomberg Intelligence senior analyst for basic materials, Richard Burke, joins us now. Richard, what is Cleveland-Cliffs issue that it has right now?
Right now, it's twofold. One is, it's in the process. It had consolidated industry 2 years ago when it bought AK Steel and ArcelorMittal's U.S. businesses. So it's in the process of integrating it and bringing those up to its operating standards. But also, the industry has kind of bifurcated into blast furnaces and EAFs. And Cliffs has chosen the route of blast furnaces, and there seems to be an inherent disadvantage of the blast furnace model versus EAFs. EAFs have been a little more flexible and able to deal with the volatility in the industry a little bit better than the integrated, and that's where Cliffs is facing its challenges today.
Can we step back and just give us a sense of where the steel industry is in this country in 2023? It's not like all over the Rust Belt. I mean, how many companies are there? How many factories are there? Whatever.